Today we're gonna start covering chapter 8. I'm gonna basically cover all the material today. We will do a few problems here and there, but next Monday we'll do more problems using those quizzes, and I'm gonna start coverage of chapter 9 next Monday. Tomorrow morning you'll have chapter 7 quiz and homework available for you. You can start working on them. Now, the idea about investment criteria is to evaluate and decide whether a given investment project, namely capital expenditures, are acceptable These are known as capital budgeting, which means allocating the available capital assets you have into investment projects. Whether you want to start a new product, add a new factory, change an existing product, buy another firm, you know, and that sort of stuff. They're potentially value adding to the firm. The freshest example is today UBS, I think it's Union Bank of Switzerland. There used to be two big Swiss banks. One of them was UBS, the other was SBC, Swiss Bank Corporation. But SBC was bought by UBS a long time ago. Back in 1997, around Christmas, both UBS and SBC fired a lot of people. And there was a joke in London, what does UBS stand for? You've been sacked. The British say sacked instead of fired. And what does SBC stands for? Sacked before Christmas. But CSF, Credit Suisse, for 3.2 billion at the time of the announcement. They're basically paying in shares of UBS. Let's right now it's trading at 93 cents per share, just year to date. I mean, about a month ago, let's get it to the same date. It was over $3. Let's look at it about a year ago. It was worth $8. About 5 years ago, it was worth $16. Credit Suisse had some major problems. They lost about $8 billion because of some shenanigans going on back in the fall. But, with the issues starting in US, again, there was a big runoff on the firm. 10% of the bank was, almost 10%, was already owned by essentially the company of the royal family in Saudi Arabia. Those guys by law couldn't invest more than 10%, so they declined to put in more money. Swiss central bank put in $50 billion roughly worth of liquidity into it. That didn't do it. Finally, they decided to sell it to UBS for $3.2 billion. That's even less now because actually, as of this morning, it was worth, there was a big decline. This morning it was 1866. Now it's a little bit more. But either way, uh, they had to make a decision, right? And they had to do that quickly. They had to look at the assets and liabilities of the firm, and given what they can do with those assets, whether or not it was worth it. More than likely, they gotten some under the table promise from the Saudi Arabian National Bank, because those guys lost a lot of money. I mean, they bought 10% of Credit Suisse sometime in the fall. And at that point, right now at this price, Credit Suisse is worth about $3.78 billion. More than likely, 10% of that is 400 million. More than likely, they lost close to 4 billion on the deal. I'm not crying for them. They made so much money from oil during the last year because of the war, but I wouldn't be surprised that they got a promise from UBS that they could buy up to 10%. But either way, a decision needs to be made. Or you're going to start a new product. My favorite example is, suppose Gillette wants to start a 7-blade razor. Years ago, when I first started shaving, Gillette was kind of the dominant brand. It still is, to such extent that the Turkish word for razor was Gillette itself. We pronounced it Gillette, but that was the case. We never called it a razor or shaving razor. That's what Norwegians call it, shaving razor. And around mid 80s, they started a 2-blade version and the 3-blade version. Then one of their competitors, Schick, they came up with Quattro 4-blade. And Gillette's response to that was, we're not going to simply imitate them. They did the 5-blade. And 5-blade has been there, I think, the last 20 years or so. I personally use it. I don't shave that often, but when I shave, it needs to be very close. Suppose they decided to do 7-blade. Okay? And what are they going to do? They will probably do marketing research and decide and project how much they can sell and at what price, and also project any potential cannibalization. I'm thinking of myself. I would never ever use anything other than Gillette products. So if I end up deciding the 7-blade version, I'm not going to buy the 5-blade. So they're going to lose some of those sales, not all of them. and also estimate how much it would cost to produce, and put the machinery in place, and come up with estimates of annual project cash flows. So suppose year zero, this is the year when all the most of the capital investment is made. And let's call it negative 50 million. And after that, year one, I don't know, year 1 through 3, 12 million. Years 4 through 7, 20 million. Year 8 through 15, 25 million. And there is a word called million. The spell checker didn't say anything. These are net cash flows, net of the costs for those years. So the problem now is how to make a decision. There are many decision criteria you can come up with. But a good criteria there are many decision criterion. Criterion is the plural of criteria in Latin. But a good criteria needs to have at least the following 4 properties. 1, it should take all the project cash flows into consideration. And how you do that is a separate business. But you can't simply say, I'm going to only look at years 1 through 3 or years 8 through 12. It should take time value of the money into account, which means $10 million in year 8 is not considered the same as $10 million in year 1. In most economies, $10 million in year 1 is better, but there are cases where interest rates can be negative, and it's the other way around. It should take riskiness of the project into account. And it should indicate how much value is added to the firm. So I'm going to take all the cash flows into account. I'm going to basically work with present values of things. That's what taking the time value of the account, time value of the money into account means. And